there are traditions that flow like underground rivers. They course through the depths of centuries, invisible to the surface glance, nourishing the roots of what we call human wisdom. One such river begins in the dusty libraries of ancient Babylon and flows through every age, changing its course but never running dry. In the 6th century, before the Common Era, when temples burned and nations wandered in exile, a small group of outcasts bent over scrolls in the flickering light of oil lamps. They sought not comfort in familiar prayers. They sought a code, a secret language through which the Creator spoke to creation. And they found it in the spaces between letters, in the numerical values of words, in what lay hidden behind the veil of ordinary meaning. From those nocturnal conversations was born a tradition the world would know as Kabbalah, a secret teaching that would pass through the hands of a mystic dancing in ecstasy beneath Galilean stars, through the cell of a Spanish scribe creating a book that would become sacred to millions, through the laboratories of Prague alchemists and the courts of Eastern European Hasidim, through university lecture halls in America and modern meditation centers. In every age, it wore new garments, spoke the language of its time, but guarded one secret: the secret of how the finite touches the infinite, how in every human soul grows a tree whose roots reach into the source of all existence, while its branches extend into worlds no one has yet seen. This is the story of how a few letters become a map of the universe, how ancient symbols transform into living practices, how the search for meaning, begun in the ruins of a destroyed temple, leads to the discovery of a temple that no one can destroy, because it is built not of stones, but of light. Sometimes history begins not with great events, but with silence, with that moment when a question too deep for ordinary words is born in a human soul. Imagine ancient Babylon, the 6th century before our era. Dust on the roads still remembers the footsteps of those led into captivity. The air is thick with smoke from the sacrificial altars of foreign gods. And somewhere in this alien world, among clay tablets and ziggurats, a small group of people bends over scrolls. Their fingers carefully unroll parchment inscribed with letters of an ancient language. letters that for them are not mere symbols, but living sparks of divine fire. You hear the whisper of their voices in the evening twilight. They read the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, but they do not read as one reads an ordinary book. They search, they seek between the lines, behind the words, in the space between letters. For to them it is obvious that if these words came from the Creator himself, then something greater than appears on the surface must be hidden within them. There must be mystery. There must be code. There must be a key to understanding how the world is constructed and how the human soul is constructed. The word Kabbalah does not yet exist. It will be born later, from an ancient Hebrew root meaning reception, acceptance. Reception of what? Acceptance of secret tradition, passed from teacher to student, from heart to heart. But now, in these first centuries of exile, there is only the thirst for understanding, only the pain of the destroyed temple, only the question that torments the soul of every believer. If God is all-powerful, if he loves his people, then why did he allow this to happen? Why does Jerusalem lie in ruins? Why is the chosen people scattered across the world? And in seeking answers, they plunge deeper into the sacred text. They notice strange things. Why in the first verse of the Torah does the word Elohim, God, stand in plural form, while the verb is singular? Why is in the creation story is it written that God created heaven and earth, and then suddenly there is mention of darkness over the abyss? Where did this darkness come from if it was not created? Why does the Torah call the Creator by different names in different places? Sometimes Elohim, sometimes Adonai, sometimes by the unpronounceable 4-letter name. You feel the tension in the air of that room, the scent of burning oil in the lamps, the warmth of breath from the sages bent over the text. Their eyes glitter in the flickering light. They understand they stand on the threshold of something great, on the threshold of a discovery that could change their entire understanding of God, the world, and humanity. One of them, the eldest, runs his finger along the letters. His voice is barely audible. He speaks of how every letter in the Torah has numerical value, how one can add these numbers seek connections between words with identical numerical sums. How letters are not simply symbols for sounds. They are forces. They are divine energies through which the world was created. Another leans closer. He whispers about the vision of the prophet Ezekiel, about 4 mysterious creatures, about wheels within wheels, about a throne of sapphire and a fiery figure upon it. What if this is not merely a vision? What if this is a map of how the divine descends into our world, a map of heavenly spheres through which the light of the Creator passes before reaching our reality? A third remains silent. He simply gazes at the scroll, at the white spaces between the black letters, and suddenly he speaks quietly. Perhaps the mystery is hidden not in the black fire of letters, but in the white fire of emptiness between them. Perhaps what we do not see is more important than what we see. Hours pass unnoticed. Outside, night has long since fallen. Babylon sleeps. But here, in this small room, time has stopped. Here is born what centuries later will be called Kabbalah, secret teaching, mystical tradition. But now, it is not yet teaching. It is living search. It is passionate desire to understand. It is love for God that cannot be satisfied with simple answers. They do not yet know that their nocturnal conversations will become the seed from which will grow a tree of wisdom, spreading its branches throughout all human history. That their questions will echo in the mountains of Galilee and in the schools of medieval Spain, in the underground circles of the Inquisition, and in the palaces of European kings, in the Hasidic courts of Eastern Europe, and in modern Kabbalah centers around the world. Now there is only the silence of night, and the light of the oil lamp, and ancient letters on parchment, and human hearts open to mystery. In this silence, in this light, in these hearts, is born a tradition that will never be completed, because each generation must discover it anew. Each soul must walk its own path to understanding. Each seeker must find their own key to the sacred text. The morning wind rustles in the palms of Babylon. The sages roll up their scrolls, hide them in clay vessels, disperse to their homes. But what was born this night cannot be stopped. Secret knowledge has begun its journey through the centuries, a journey that will bring it to the most unexpected places and into the most unexpected hearts. Decades pass. Persians replace Babylonians. Greeks come in place of Persians. Rome absorbs the Greek world. And somewhere in the silence of study, in the whisper of transmission from teacher to student, grows and strengthens the tradition of secret knowledge, the tradition of seeking hidden meaning in sacred texts, the tradition of understanding the world as multi-layered reality, where behind every visible phenomenon hides an invisible cause. And now, the first centuries of the Common Era, Palestine under Roman rule, the Second Temple destroyed, the people again in exile, and again sages bend over scrolls. Again they seek answers to eternal questions. But now they have something more than their predecessors in Babylon. Now they have tradition. They have methods. They have language for describing the ineffable. Among these sages stands out a figure who will become legendary. Rabbi Akiva ben Joseph, a simple shepherd who became one of the greatest sages of his time, a man who dared to enter where others feared to tread, into Parda, into the heavenly garden, into the most intimate secrets of the divine world. You envision him, tall, with gray in his beard, with eyes that see more than this world shows. He stands before a group of his students. Behind him stretch the hills of Galilee, covered with olive groves. The air is filled with the fragrance of blooming almond trees. Birds sing in the branches. The world seems peaceful and simple. But Rabbi Akiva speaks not of what the eyes see. He speaks of what lies hidden behind the veil of the material world. He tells a story of 4 sages who decided to enter Pardes. This word means garden, but not an ordinary garden, a heavenly garden, a place where the tree of knowledge grows, a place where one can see the divine chariot described by the prophet Ezekiel, a place where the soul can touch the very essence of being. 4 entered Pardes, says Rabbi Akiva in a quiet voice. Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, Akur, and Rabbi Akiva himself, 4 of the wisest men of their time, 4 who dared to cross the boundary between visible and invisible worlds. his voice becomes even quieter. The students lean closer so as not to miss a word. Rabbi Akiva continues. Ben Azai looked into the mystery and died. Ben Zoma looked and went mad. Aker looked and became an apostate, breaking with the faith of his fathers. And only Rabbi Akiva entered in peace and departed in peace. What did he see there in that heavenly garden? He never told in detail. Only hints, only images. He spoke of the throne of glory surrounded by fiery seraphim, of rivers of light flowing from the foot of the throne, of heavenly palaces where the voices of angels sound, of secret names of the Creator whose pronunciation can change reality. But the main thing he understood in that vision was not in the details. The main thing was in the very fact that such a vision is possible, that the human soul is capable of ascending to the divine, that there is connection between our world and the world above. There are paths, there are gates, and these gates are open to those ready to pass through them. The students listen with bated breath. They understand the teacher is initiating them into the most intimate mystery, into the mystery of mystical experience, into the mystery of direct contact with the divine. But they also understand something else, that this mystery is dangerous, that not everyone is capable of enduring an encounter with the Absolute, that preparation is needed, purification, gradual ascent up the steps of holiness. Rabbi Akiva looks at each of them attentively. He seeks in their eyes readiness. Readiness not only to know, but to bear responsibility for knowledge. Readiness to guard the secret. Readiness to transmit it only to the worthy. Because mystical knowledge is not simply information. It is living force. It is fire that can warm the soul, but it can also burn one who is not ready for it. The sun declines toward sunset. Shadows from the olive trees grow longer. Rabbi Akiva finishes his story. But for his students, the day is just beginning. A day of new understanding. A day when they learned that the world is much larger and more mysterious than it seemed before. A day when they received keys to gates leading into infinity. They disperse in silence. Each carries within himself a spark of that fire the teacher kindled in them, a spark that will burn throughout their lives, a spark they will pass to their students. And so, from heart to heart, from soul to soul, will be transmitted the secret tradition, the tradition of entering parts, the tradition of mystical ascent to the Creator. Centuries will pass before this tradition takes written form, before secret teachings are recorded in books, before mystical wisdom becomes accessible not only to chosen students, but to all seekers of truth. But the seed is already sown. In the silence of a Galilean evening, in the words of a great teacher, in the hearts of ready students, time flows in its unhurried stream. The Roman Empire declines toward sunset. Christianity becomes the state religion. Barbarians migrate to the territories of former Roman provinces. Islam conquers the Middle East and North Africa. The world changes. But somewhere in the silence of houses of learning, in the whisper of nocturnal conversations, in the prayers of hermits, the tradition of mystical wisdom continues to live and develop. And now, the 12th century, medieval Spain, land of three religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, land where Arabic philosophy meets Jewish mysticism, where ancient texts are translated, where in an atmosphere of relative tolerance, arts and sciences flourish. In a small town in Castile lives a sage named Moses de Leon, a modest, unremarkable man, a copyist of manuscripts, a dealer in books. No one suspects that in his head ripens a work that will change all Jewish mysticism, a work that will become the sacred book of Kabbalists of all times and peoples. You enter his house in the evening. Narrow streets are lit by torches. The air is thick with the scent of olive oil and spices. Somewhere in the distance, Arabic music sounds. Moses de Leon sits at his table, bent over parchment. His hand moves across the paper, quickly, confidently, as if he is not composing, but taking dictation, as if someone invisible stands beside him and whispers words. He writes a book that will become known as the Zohar, the Book of Splendor, but he does not sign it with his own name. He attributes authorship to an ancient sage of the 2nd century, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, the same one who, according to legend, spent 13 years in a cave, hiding from Roman persecutors. And there, in that cave, the greatest secrets of creation were revealed to him. Why does Moses de Leon do this? Perhaps from modesty. Perhaps understanding that a new book will be received more seriously if attributed to ancient authority. Or perhaps because for him it does not matter who is the author. What matters is only that truth finds its way to human hearts. You look over his shoulder at pages covered with Aramaic text. This is not simply a book. This is a living organism. This is dialogue between teacher and students. Rabbi Shimon and his companions wander through Galilee. They stop under trees. They rest by springs. And there, in the shade of foliage, to the murmur of water, they conduct conversations about the most intimate things. About how God creates the world. About what the human soul is. About how divine light descends through multiple worlds before reaching our reality. About how every letter of the Torah contains within itself entire universes of meaning. About how man is a microcosm reflecting within himself all creation. Moses de Leon stops. He sets down his pen, rubs his eyes. He is tired. But this is not ordinary fatigue. This is the condition of a man who has touched something infinitely great, who has tried to express in words what transcends all words, who has built a bridge between human language and divine mystery. He rises, approaches the window. Outside is the starry sky of Castile, the same stars at which Babylonian sages gazed, the same stars that illuminated the conversations of Rabbi Akiva with his students, the same stars that will shine upon future generations of truth seekers. And in this silence, in this star-lit quiet, he understands that what he writes is greater than himself, greater than his time, greater than his people. This is humanity's attempt to understand its place in the universe, to understand the connection between finite and infinite, between temporal and eternal, between human and divine. In the morning, he will again sit at the table, again take pen in hand, again record the dialogues of Rabbi Shimon and his students, will weave from words that web of images and symbols which for centuries will become a map for travelers into the world of secret knowledge. He does not yet know that his book will be copied by hand, that it will be hidden from the Inquisition, that it will be studied underground, that through centuries it will become sacred text for thousands of people around the world, that its symbols and images will penetrate Christian mysticism and Islamic Sufism, that its influence will be felt by poets and artists, philosophers and psychologists. Now there is only night, and a pen in the hand of a man who dared to look into the abyss of mystery, and words being born on parchment, words about shining light that permeates all worlds, about divine names that create reality, about the human soul as a spark of divine fire. The Zohar is born in the silence of a Spanish night, born as an attempt to speak the unspeakable, as an attempt to transmit the experience of encounter with the Absolute, as a bridge between the mystical experience of a solitary soul and humanity's thirst for understanding. Imagine a tree, not an ordinary tree growing in a garden or forest, but a tree of light, a tree whose roots reach into infinity, while its branches extend into all worlds, a tree where every leaf is an entire universe, every branch a divine force, every node a point where heavenly touches earthly. This tree appears in the visions of Kabbalists gradually, first as a vague sensation, as understanding that there must be mediators between creator and creation. There must be steps. There must be levels through which divine light descends into our world. Because how can the infinite directly touch the finite? How can the absolute manifest in the relative? A bridge is needed. A ladder is needed. A tree is needed. And in the texts of the Zohar, this tree takes form. 10 Sephiroth, 10 emanations of divine light, 10 vessels into which infinite blessing pours, 10 mirrors reflecting the face of the Creator. Each Sephira has a name. Each has its place on the tree. Each has its role in the process of creation. You raise your gaze upward to the very crown of the tree. There, in unreachable height, shines Keter, the crown. This is not a Sephira in the ordinary sense. This is not even light. This is darkness, brighter than any light. This is silence, louder than any words. This is the point where divine will has not yet become manifest, where the Creator's intention still rests in absolute peace. From Keter, like morning mist, emanate the first two true Sephiroth. Chochma, wisdom, on the right. Bina, understanding, on the left. The masculine and feminine principles of divine mind. Chochma is the first flash of creative impulse, the moment when the idea of the world is born in divine consciousness. Binah is the womb in which this idea develops and takes form. The understanding mother who carries within herself all future worlds. You feel how between these three upper Sephiroth flows special light. Light so pure and intense that no creature can endure it directly. This is the world that in Kabbalah is called Atzilut, the world of emanation, the world where there is no distinction between light and vessel, between giver and receiver, the world of absolute unity. But creation requires differences, requires multiplicity, requires worlds where not only unity can exist, but also separateness. And therefore, the light continues to descend. Through Da'at, the mysterious point of knowledge, which sometimes is considered a sephira and sometimes is not, through an invisible veil that conceals the upper Sephiroth from the lower ones. And now before you unfolds the middle part of the tree, Chesed, mercy, on the right, Gevura, severity, on the left, Tiferet, beauty, in the center. This is the world of emotions, the world where divine qualities manifest as forces shaping reality. Chesed is boundless love, the desire to give, to expand, to embrace all existence. Gevura is necessary limitation, the severity that gives form to boundless generosity. And Tiferet is harmony between them, beauty born from the balance of opposites. You notice that each sephira does not exist by itself. They are connected by thin threads of light, paths through which divine energy flows. 22 paths corresponding to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Each path is a channel of connection. Each is a road along which the human soul can travel in its ascent to the Creator. Descending still lower, you see Netzach, victory, on the right, and Hod, glory, on the left. These are Sephiroth of action, forces that embody intention into reality. Netzach is persistence, perseverance, the ability to overcome obstacles. Hod is structure, organization, the ability to bring order to chaos. Between them, below, shines Yesod, foundation, the Sephira that gathers all higher influences and transmits them into our material world. And finally, at the very bottom of the tree, touching our earthly reality, is Malkut, kingdom. This is the world in which we live, the world of matter and form, the world where divine light is so weakened and veiled that it seems as if God does not exist at all. But Kabbalists know this is illusion. Malkut is the same Sephira as all the others. It too is full of divine light. This light is simply hidden under many veils. You stand before this tree of light and understand it is not merely a diagram, not simply a map of invisible worlds. This is a living organism. This is the body of Adam Kadmon, the primordial man, the cosmic being who is the prototype of all creation. Each Sephira corresponds to a part of this body. Keter is the head. Chochma and Bina are the eyes. Tiferet is the heart. Yesod are the reproductive organs. Malkut are the feet. But this tree is not only cosmic reality. It also reflects the structure of the human soul. Within each of us are all 10 Sephiroth. Within each is their own crown of divinity, their own wisdom, their own understanding, their own emotions, their own actions, their own kingdom of inner world. And the task of man is to learn to harmonize all these levels, to become a living embodiment of the tree of life. Kabbalists spend long hours in meditation on the Sephiroth. They imagine themselves ascending the tree, from Malkut to Yesod, from Yesod to Tiferet, from Tiferet to Dayat, and further, ever higher, until the soul merges with the source of all light, with Ein Sof, the infinite divine principle that transcends even Keter. This ascent is not merely an intellectual exercise. This is transformation. Each level requires certain qualities, certain purity, certain understanding. One cannot ascend to Chesed without developing within oneself the capacity for unconditional love. One cannot touch Bina without purifying one's mind of selfish thoughts. One cannot reach Keter without completely dissolving one's separate personality. And therefore, the tree of life becomes not only a map of the cosmos, it becomes a path of self-perfection, a ladder by which man can ascend from his animal nature to the divine, a compass pointing the direction of spiritual growth. Centuries will pass, and this tree will be studied not only by Jewish mystics. Christian Kabbalists will see in it the structure of angelic hierarchies. Alchemists will find in it a description of the process of transmutation. Psychologists of the 20th century will discover in it a map of the human subconscious, but the essence will remain unchanged. This is an attempt to understand how the one becomes multiple, and how the multiple can return to the one. In the silence of night, the tree of light continues to grow in the hearts of meditators, in the minds of students, in the souls of seekers. Its branches extend through all times and all cultures. Its fruits, understanding, wisdom, love, ripen in everyone ready to pluck them. Now imagine letters, not simply signs on paper, not simply a way to record the sounds of speech, but living forces, building blocks from which the universe is constructed, tools with which the Creator created all worlds. 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, from Aleph to Tav, each a unique energy, each a special vibration of the divine voice. This understanding, too, is born gradually, in the silence of study, in the depth of contemplation. Kabbalists notice strange things. Why are some letters in the Torah written larger than usual? Why are others smaller? Why in some words are letters rearranged? Could this be accident? Or does secret meaning lie hidden behind this? They begin to count. Each Hebrew letter has numerical value. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Gimel is 3, and so on. One can add the numerical values of letters in words. One can seek words with identical sums. One can discover hidden connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. This method receives the name gematria, the numerical mysticism of letters. You sit beside a Kabbalist at his working table. Candles illuminate pages covered with calculations. He shows you an amazing thing. The word echad, 1, in sum gives 13, and the word ahava, love, also gives 13. Therefore, unity and love are one and the same. This is not simply a philosophical idea. This is mathematical truth encrypted in the very structure of the sacred language. He shows more. The word Elohim, God, in sum gives 86, and the phrase ha-teva, nature, also gives 86. Therefore, God and nature are one and the same. The divine is not opposite to the natural. It is hidden within the natural. It permeates it. It is its true essence. But gematria is only one method of working with letters. There is also notarikon, when each letter of a word is viewed as the initial letter of another word. There is temera, when letters are rearranged according to certain rules, revealing new meanings. There are many other techniques, each allowing one to look deeper into the secrets of the sacred text. Kabbalists understand that letters are alive. When the prophet says that God created the world by word, this is not metaphor. This is literal truth. The pronunciation of letters in a certain sequence releases creative forces, changes reality, summons angels, opens gates between worlds. And therefore, they treat letters with the greatest caution. There are strict rules about how to write sacred texts, with what inks, on what paper, in what state of mind the scribe must be. One mistake and the entire scroll becomes unusable. One wrong letter and sacred energy disperses. Special place is occupied by the names of God. The four-letter name Yod, He, Vav, He is considered so sacred that it cannot be pronounced aloud. One can only think about it, meditate on its letters. Imagine how they shine with divine light. This name contains within itself the entire fullness of divine being. Past, present, and future time, all levels of reality, from highest to lowest. Other names of God also possess special power. Elohim is the name of divine severity. Adonai is the name of divine kingdom. El Shaddai is the name of divine sufficiency. Each name opens a certain aspect of divinity. Each can be used for certain types of prayer and meditation. But the most secret names are transmitted only orally, from teacher to student, in whispers, in complete silence. These are names of 72 letters, names of 42 letters, names whose pronunciation can stop time, change the laws of nature, resurrect the dead, names known only to the greatest righteous ones, and even then, not completely. Kabbalists develop complex systems of meditation on letters. They imagine them written in fire in the heavens, see them dancing in the air, hear their singing. Each letter has its color, its sound, its place in the human body. Aleph corresponds to breath, Bet to the lips, Gimel to the throat, and so on. They learn to vibrate letters with their entire being, not simply to pronounce them with the voice, but to resonate with them with every cell of the body, with every level of the soul, because letters are bridges, bridges between human consciousness and divine mind, between finite and infinite, between sound and silence. And in this practice, they discover something amazing, that their own speech is also creativity, that every spoken word creates an angel or demon, that every thought clothed in letters becomes a force acting in the universe. That man is co-creator of the world, that his consciousness, expressed through sacred letters, can change reality. They begin to understand the deep meaning of the commandment not to take the name of God in vain. This is not simply an ethical requirement. This is a warning about power, about the enormous energy contained in sacred sounds, about the responsibility that lies upon one who knows the true names. In the silence of night, the Kabbalist repeats the letters of the sacred alphabet. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. His lips barely move. His breath becomes prayer. His heart becomes a resonator of divine vibrations. And somewhere in invisible worlds, these sounds transform into light, into angels, into forces supporting the existence of the universe. Because in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And this word continues to sound in every letter of the sacred alphabet, in every name of the Creator, in every prayer of a believing heart. But now comes the year 1492. In the sky above Granada flutter the banners of Christian kings. the last Moorish emirate has fallen. The Reconquista is complete and begins what will change the fate of Jewish mysticism forever. The Spanish Inquisition, exile, the scattering of sages across the world. You stand on the shore in a Spanish port. Ships prepare for departure. On the decks are crowds of exiles. Old men clutching Torah scrolls to their chests. Women with infants in their arms. Teenagers who will never again see the homes of their childhood. In their eyes is pain, bewilderment, but also something else. Determination. Understanding that they carry with them treasure more precious than gold. Secret knowledge, living tradition, sparks of light that must be preserved. Among them are Kabbalists, sages who have spent their entire lives studying the secrets of the Zohar, who knew the names of angels and the paths of soul ascension, who could read between the lines of sacred text. Now they too become exiles, wanderers, bearers of tradition that no longer has a home. Ships depart. Some head to Italy, others to Turkey, still others to the distant lands of North Africa. Each ship carries with it part of the great library of Spanish Jewry. Each passenger is a living link in the chain of secret knowledge transmission. Years pass. The exiles settle in new lands, create new communities, build new houses of learning. And somewhere in the mountains of Galilee, in the ancient city of Sephiroth, begins a new chapter in the history of Kabbalah, a chapter that will open such depths of mystical wisdom as the world has never known. Sephiroth is located high in the mountains. The air here is pure and transparent. From the heights opens a view of the Sea of Galilee, of fields where once Rabbi Akiva preached, of caves where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai hid. This place is steeped in memory of great sages of the past, and now here come sages of the present. Among them stands out the figure of a young man. His name is Isaac Luria. He is not yet 40 years old, but his eyes hold the wisdom of ages. He was born in Jerusalem, studied in Egypt, spent long years in solitude on an island in the middle of the Nile, immersed in studying the Zohar. And now he has come to Sephiroth to reveal to the world a new understanding of Kabbalah. His teaching astounds even the most experienced sages. He speaks of how the process of creation was not only construction, but also catastrophe. That at the very beginning, when divine light wanted to manifest in creation, something unforeseen occurred. The vessels intended to contain the light could not withstand its intensity. They shattered, broke into fragments, and sparks of holiness scattered across all worlds. You listen to him in a small room in Sephiroth. Outside, the wind rustles in the cedars. Stars shine in the pure mountain air. Rabbi Isaac speaks quietly, but his words penetrate to the very depths of the soul. He tells of Sephiroth HaKelim, the breaking of vessels, of how the perfect world shattered into fragments, how unity became multiplicity, how harmony became chaos. But this is not the end of the story. This is its beginning, because the task of man is to gather the scattered sparks, to raise holiness from the places of its exile, to restore the broken vessels, to return to the world its original perfection. This is called Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. And this is not simply a mystical idea. This is a practical program of action. Every action of man affects the cosmic process of restoration. Every good thought raises a spark of holiness. Every prayer repairs the torn fabric of reality. Every observance of commandment brings closer the final repair of the world. Man is not simply an observer of the cosmic drama. He is its main actor. Rabbi Isaac develops complex meditative practices. He teaches his followers special forms of prayer that can influence the higher worlds. He reveals the secrets of soul transmigration, how souls wander from body to body, from life to life, until they fulfill their mission of repair. He creates a new map of spiritual worlds, more detailed and complex than anything known before. His students record every word of the teacher, but Rabbi Isaac himself writes almost nothing. He says his time has not yet come, that his teaching is intended for future generations, for the time when the world will be ready for final repair. And indeed, his life in Sephiroth lasts briefly, only 2 years. But in these 2 years, he manages to transmit to his students such a volume of mystical knowledge that its study will take centuries. His system of Kabbalah will become the foundation for all subsequent developments of Jewish mysticism. His ideas will influence Hasidism, modern psychology, quantum physics. But the main thing he gives the world is hope. Hope that the broken can be restored, that the scattered can be gathered, that every person, however small and insignificant they may seem, can participate in the great process of cosmic repair. After his death, students continue to develop his teaching. They write books, create schools, transmit tradition to new generations. Seift becomes a center of Kabbalistic learning. Here come sages from around the world. From here, Lurianic Kabbalah spreads to all Jewish communities. But time goes on. The political situation in Galilee deteriorates. Sages begin to leave. Seift, the center of Kabbalistic teaching, gradually moves to other places, to Eastern Europe, to Italy, to North Africa, and everywhere Kabbalists go, they bring with them sparks of that light that was kindled in the mountains of Galilee. Sparks of light scattered across the broken world, sages exiled from their homes, tradition that survives despite everything, and faith that one day everything will be repaired. All sparks will be gathered. All vessels will be restored, and divine light will again shine in all its original purity and power. In the silence of Seift night, the wind rustles in the cedars. Stars reflect in the waters of the Sea of Galilee. And somewhere in this silence, in this light, continues the great work of repairing the world. Slowly, perceptibly, but unstoppably. But sometimes light spreads through unexpected paths. Sometimes mystery finds its home where it is least expected. In the 15th century, when Jewish sages hide from the Inquisition, Kabbalistic books fall into the hands of Christian scholars, and begins an amazing process. The secret teaching of the people of Israel becomes part of the European intellectual tradition. Imagine Florence of the Renaissance, a city where art meets science, where ancient wisdom is reborn in new forms, where patrons collect libraries and scholars translate ancient texts. In one of the palazzos, behind high windows with stained glass, a young man bends over a Hebrew manuscript. His name is Giovanni Pico della Mirandola. He is 23 years old, but he already knows many languages and is considered one of the most educated people of his time. You hear the scratch of pen on paper, smell ink and parchment. Pico translates. Not simply translates, he discovers a new world for himself, a world where Hebrew letters guard the secrets of creation, where names of God can change reality, where man is understood as microcosm reflecting the entire universe within himself. He writes a treatise he will call 900 Theses. Among them are 72 theses based on Kabbalistic sources. He asserts that Kabbalah confirms the truth of Christianity, that in secret Jewish texts one can find prophecies about Christ, that mystical names of God point to the mystery of the Trinity. This is a bold statement. The Church is suspicious of any non-Christian sources of wisdom. But Pico is convinced. Truth is one, wherever it may be discovered, whether in Christian theology or Jewish mysticism, whether in Greek philosophy or Egyptian magic. All this consists of rays of one and the same divine light. His ideas are taken up by others. Johann Reuchlin in Germany studies Hebrew and Kabbalistic texts. He writes a book on the Kabbalistic art, where he tries to unite Jewish mysticism with Christian theology. Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa creates an extensive system of occult philosophy in which Kabbalah occupies a central place. You enter Agrippa's house in Cologne. The walls are hung with astrological charts. On the tables are alchemical instruments. The air smells of sulfur and metal. Agrippa shows you tables of correspondences. Each letter of the Hebrew alphabet is connected with a planet. Each planet with a metal. Each metal with a part of the human body. Each part of the body with a virtue or vice. This is no longer pure Kabbalah. This is synthesis, a mixing of Jewish mysticism with Hermeticism, astrology, alchemy. A new tradition is created, Christian Kabbalah, a tradition that will influence European thought for centuries. Secret societies begin to use Kabbalistic symbols. Rosicrucians see in the tree of Sephiroth a map of spiritual development. Freemasons find in Hebrew letters keys to architectural secrets. Alchemists use names of God in their operations of metal transmutation. But the most amazing thing happens in the minds of individual thinkers. They begin to see in Kabbalah not simply a system of magical practices, but deep philosophy, understanding of the nature of consciousness, a map of the human psyche. Giordano Bruno uses Kabbalistic memory techniques. Gottfried Leibniz finds in gematria a prototype of his binary number system. You sit in Emperor Rudolph's library in Prague. Here are gathered thousands of occult manuscripts. Among them are translations of the Zohar into Latin, commentaries by Christian authors on Kabbalistic texts, synthetic treatises trying to unite all esoteric traditions into one system. The atmosphere of this library is saturated with mystery. Here work alchemists and astrologers, mathematicians and philosophers. All of them somehow touch upon Kabbalistic ideas. All find in them something important for their searches. And gradually, Kabbalah ceases to be exclusively a Jewish tradition. It becomes part of the common European heritage. Its symbols decorate churches and palaces. Its ideas penetrate literature and art. Its methods are used in the emerging science. Of course, much is lost in this process. Christian Kabbalists do not always understand the context of Jewish texts. They interpret symbols according to their beliefs. They add elements foreign to the original tradition, but they also contribute something new. They show that mystical wisdom can cross the boundaries of religions and cultures. Centuries pass. The Renaissance gives way to the Enlightenment. Rationality becomes the new religion. Mysticism seems a relic of the dark past. Kabbalistic societies go underground. But tradition does not die. It waits for its hour. And in the 18th century, in remote villages of Eastern Europe, something unexpected happens. Kabbalah, which for centuries was the property of the learned elite, suddenly descends to the common people, becomes a source of joy, transforms into dance and song, acquires a human face. This begins with one man. His name is Israel ben Eliezer, but the world knows him by another name, Baal Shem Tov, master of the good name, a man who knows how to work miracles, not by the force of magical formulas, but by the force of simple faith, by the force of love for God and people. You walk along forest paths in Podolia. The air is fresh, and clean, birds sing in the branches. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the sound of an axe. Woodcutters work in the thicket. And suddenly, in a clearing, you see him, a simple Jew in worn clothing. He stands among trees with closed eyes. His lips barely move. He prays. But this prayer is not like the solemn services in synagogues. This is conversation, intimate dialogue with the Creator. The Baal Shem Tov discovered a simple truth. God does not live only in the heavens. He is present in everything, in every leaf, in every drop of dew, in every human heart. And therefore, one can serve him not only through studying complex books. One can serve with joy, dance, song, simple human kindness. He begins to teach, not in yeshivas, not from a podium, but in the homes of simple people, at fairs, in taverns. He tells parables that everyone can understand, about how the prayer of a simple person can be dearer to God than the learning of a rabbi, about how a spark of divinity lives in every soul, about how the world is full of miracles for those who know how to see them. His followers call themselves Hasidim, the pious ones. But their piety is not like stern asceticism. This is the piety of joy. They dance during prayer, sing while studying Torah, turn Sabbath into a holiday full of light and merriment. Kabbalistic ideas do not disappear in this. They remain, but they are transformed. Complex meditations on Sephiroth become simple songs about divine light. The teaching about the breaking of vessels becomes understanding that in every person there is a spark of holiness that needs to be freed. Tikkun Olam, repairing the world, becomes everyday deeds of mercy and love. You enter a Hasidic home on a festive evening. The table is covered with a white cloth. Candles burn. Around the table sit men in black kaftans and fur hats. They sing. Their voices merge into a single hymn of joy. Their faces glow with inner light. This is not solemn service. This is family celebration. This is a meeting of friends united by common love for the Creator. The head of the community, the tzaddik, the righteous one, tells a story from the Zohar, but he does not delve into complex interpretations. He finds simple human wisdom in the ancient text. He shows how mystical ideas help to live, how they console in grief, how they fill ordinary days with joy. The movement grows quickly. Throughout Eastern Europe, Hasidic communities arise. Each has its own tzaddik. Each has its own characteristics, but all are united by common understanding that God is close, that He loves every person, that service to Him should be joyful. Of course, not everyone accepts the new movement. Learned rabbis are indignant. How can one simplify sacred tradition? How can one turn deep mysticism into folk songs? They organize opposition, the mitnagdim, opponents. A polemic begins that will last for decades. But Hasidism does not stop. It gives people what they lacked in official religion: warmth, closeness, understanding that they are needed by God as they are, that they do not need to become great scholars to be loved by the Creator. In Hasidic communities, a special culture is born, a culture of storytelling. Each story is a lesson. Each parable is a key to understanding the secrets of creation. Simple people become bearers of wisdom that was previously accessible only to the chosen few. You sit by the fire in a Hasidic house on a winter evening. Outside, a blizzard howls, but here it is warm and cozy. An elderly Hasid tells how his grandfather met the Baal Shem Tov, how the great teacher found God in the simplest things, in bread that feeds the poor, in the tears of a widow, in the laughter of children. And you understand. A miracle has occurred. Kabbalah, which for centuries was an esoteric tradition accessible only to initiates, has become a popular movement. Secret knowledge has transformed into living faith. Complex philosophical constructions have become a source of simple human joy. Time goes on. Hasidism takes root in Jewish life. Dynasties of tzaddikim arise. Synagogues are built. Rich literature of teachings and parables develops. But most importantly, the spirit is preserved. The spirit of joy. The spirit of closeness to God. The spirit of understanding that holiness can be found everywhere there is love. And when in the 20th century, Hasidic communities are destroyed by wars and persecution, when millions of bearers of this tradition perish in catastrophe, the seeds sown by the Baal Shem Tov will give new shoots. In America, in Israel, around the world, because what he discovered cannot be destroyed. The joy of communion with God, closeness to the Creator, understanding that every person carries within himself a spark of divine light. In the silence of Hasidic prayer, in the melody of ancient chants, in dance that lasts until dawn, continues to live that Kabbalah which became popular, which descended from heaven to earth, which found its home in simple human hearts. The 19th century. Steamships plow the oceans. Trains connect continents. The world becomes smaller, and together with millions of immigrants across the Atlantic, sail books, traditions, ideas, including Kabbalistic texts that find a new home in the New World. 19th century America is a land of opportunity, a land where one can begin life anew, where old boundaries lose meaning, where immigrants from different countries create a new culture. And in this melting pot of cultures, Kabbalah also acquires new forms. You walk the streets of the Lower East Side in New York. The air is filled with the aromas of food from different countries. On signs are inscriptions in dozens of languages. In small synagogues pray emigrants from Polish villages and Lithuanian towns. They brought with them their traditions, their books, their ways of understanding the divine. But America changes everything. Here there are no strict castes, no prohibitions on professions. A Jewish immigrant can become a merchant or doctor, lawyer or engineer, and together with social boundaries, religious ones also blur. Kabbalistic ideas begin to penetrate the most unexpected spheres. At the beginning of the 20th century, a group of American mystics creates the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. In its teaching, the Kabbalistic tree of life occupies a central place. But this is no longer Jewish Kabbalah. This is a synthetic system uniting elements of different traditions: Egyptian magic, Indian yoga, Christian mysticism. Kabbalah becomes part of a broader movement, Western esotericism. You enter a Golden Dawn Lodge in Chicago. On the walls are images of Sephiroth. On the altar are Kabbalistic symbols. But ritual participants are not Jews. These are Americans of various backgrounds, united by striving for spiritual growth. They use Hebrew names of God, meditate on the tree of life, but interpret all this in the context of their own searches. Simultaneously develops academic study of Kabbalah. In American universities, departments of Jewish studies open. Scholars begin to research Kabbalistic texts, not as sacred scriptures, but as historical documents. They study the origin of symbols, analyze the influence of social factors on the development of mystical ideas. Kabbalah becomes an object of scientific analysis. Gershom Scholem, the German-Israeli scholar, creates the first serious academic history of Kabbalah. He shows that Jewish mysticism is not a single unchanging tradition, but a living process. That each generation of Kabbalists created something new. That Kabbalah constantly developed, absorbing influences from different cultures and responding to the challenges of time. But the most unexpected discoveries occur in the field of psychology. Carl Gustav Jung, studying the structure of the human subconscious, finds striking parallels with the Kabbalistic tree of life. He sees in the Sephiroth archetypes of the collective unconscious. In the paths between them, ways of psychic transformation. In Kabbalistic meditations, techniques of individuation, becoming a whole personality. You sit in Jung's office in Zurich. On the walls are mandalas drawn by his patients. On the table are Kabbalistic texts. Jung shows you amazing similarity between spontaneous drawings of modern people and ancient symbols of Jewish mysticism. The human psyche, it seems, speaks the same language as medieval Kabbalists. This discovery has enormous consequences. Kabbalah ceases to be perceived as an archaic religious system. It begins to be understood as a map of human consciousness, as a guide to spiritual development that can be useful to people of any faith. In the 60s of the 20th century begins a new wave of interest in Kabbalah. The New Age movement discovers ancient mystical traditions for itself. Kabbalah becomes popular among people seeking alternatives to materialistic culture. Centers for studying Kabbalah open. Popular books are published. Seminars and courses are conducted. But this is already quite different Kabbalah. It has lost connection with Jewish religious practice. It has become part of global spiritual culture. It is studied by Christians and Buddhists, agnostics and atheists. Its symbols are used in meditative practices and psychotherapy, in art and literature. You enter a Kabbalah center in Los Angeles. Here they teach meditation on Sephiroth to Hollywood actors, explain the meaning of Hebrew letters to Silicon Valley businessmen, conduct seminars on Kabbalistic astrology for suburban housewives. This is no longer secret teaching. This is mass movement. And at the same time, in Israel and in Orthodox Jewish communities around the world, traditional Kabbalah continues to live. Rabbis study classical texts, conduct meditations according to ancient rules, transmit knowledge from teacher to student, as has been done for centuries. Tension arises between two approaches. Traditionalists accuse popularizers of distorting sacred tradition. Modernists criticize orthodox for closedness and conservatism. But perhaps both sides are right in their own way. Perhaps Kabbalah is rich enough to exist in different forms simultaneously. The 21st century brings new possibilities. The Internet makes Kabbalistic texts accessible to millions of people. Online courses allow studying Kabbalah anywhere in the world. Virtual communities unite seekers from different countries and cultures. But the most interesting thing happens at the intersection of Kabbalah with modern science. Physicists find parallels between Kabbalistic cosmology and theories of multi-dimensional spaces. Neurobiologists research the influence of Kabbalistic meditations on brain function. Ecologists see in the concept of tikkun olam, repairing the world, a program for saving the planet. You stand in a quantum physics laboratory. On the board are equations describing the behavior of elementary particles. But the physicist explaining these formulas to you speaks of something else. About how ancient Kabbalists understood reality as a multi-layered structure. About how their idea that the observer influences the observed anticipated discoveries of quantum mechanics. Perhaps these are not simply coincidences. Perhaps Kabbalists, diving into the depths of consciousness, really touched fundamental principles of the universe's structure. Perhaps their symbolic systems are not only religious metaphors, but intuitive insights about the nature of reality. In hospitals, doctors use Kabbalistic meditation techniques to treat depression and anxiety. In schools, teachers apply Kabbalistic psychology to understand children. In corporations, managers study Kabbalistic principles of leadership and teamwork. Kabbalah has become a global phenomenon. It has gone far beyond the boundaries of the Jewish community. It has become part of universal human spiritual heritage, and at the same time, it has preserved its uniqueness, its ability to answer eternal questions of human existence. In the silence of modern night, when millions of people around the world meditate on ancient symbols, study sacred texts, seek meaning in Kabbalistic teachings, continues the same work that began in ancient Babylon, the search for understanding, the striving for connection with the divine, the desire to repair the world through repairing oneself. Oceans of time separate us from the first Kabbalists, but the mystery they discovered remains relevant. Man is a microcosm. The universe is a living organism. Everything is connected with everything, and each of us can participate in the great process of cosmic healing simply by becoming a more wise, more loving, more whole person. And now, at the beginning of the 21st century, something unexpected happens. After centuries of adaptation, synthesis, and popularization, Kabbalah begins to return to its sources. A new generation of scholars and practitioners seeks authenticity. They want to understand what Kabbalah was before it became fashionable, before its symbols decorated magazine covers, before its ideas dissolved in the general stream of New Age spirituality. You enter a modern yeshiva in Jerusalem. Behind high windows is visible the old city with its ancient stones and narrow streets. Here, within walking distance of the Western Wall, young people bend over the same texts their ancestors studied for centuries. The Zohar, the writings of the Ari, the works of Ramchal. They read not translations, but originals. In Aramaic and ancient Hebrew, they try to understand not only ideas, but context, not only symbols, but the life world in which these symbols were born. This is not fundamentalism. This is archaeology of spirit, an attempt to excavate the original impulse of the Kabbalistic tradition, to understand what moved the first mystics, what questions tormented them, what answers they found, and how these answers can help modern man lost in the labyrinth of information society. A young rabbi explains to his students a passage from the Zohar. But he does not limit himself to traditional commentaries. He shows historical context, tells about medieval Spain where this text was born, about social conditions that formed the worldview of its author, about philosophical influences that can be discovered in it. This is a new approach to Kabbalah, an approach that connects reverence with critical thinking, that is not afraid to ask difficult questions, that strives to separate eternal from temporal, universal from culturally conditioned, living from dead. At the same time, in universities around the world, develops academic study of Kabbalah. Professors decipher ancient manuscripts, compile critical editions of classical texts, research the influence of Kabbalah on other traditions, and reverse influence of other traditions on Kabbalah. You enter the library of Yale University. Here is stored one of the largest collections of Kabbalistic manuscripts in the world. Scholars work with texts that have not seen light for centuries. They restore lost teachings, discover forgotten authors, trace the evolution of ideas through the ages. Thanks to their work, we now know that Kabbalah was much more diverse than it seemed before, that there existed directions that disappeared without trace, that many texts considered ancient were actually created at late times, that the history of Kabbalah is full of breaks, influences, borrowings, and creative reinterpretations. This knowledge liberates. It shows that Kabbalah was never frozen dogma, that it always developed, that each generation had the right to create something new based on the old, and that modern practitioners also have this right, provided they know what they are building upon. A movement of neo-Kabbalists arises. These are people who have studied tradition deeply enough to understand its origins, but who are not afraid to adapt it to modern conditions. They create new forms of Kabbalistic practice, develop methods that take into account achievements of modern psychology, integrate Kabbalistic insights with scientific understanding of the world. In New Type, Kabbalah Study Centers, you meet people of the most diverse professions. Doctors who use Kabbalistic anthropology to understand the connection of soul and body. Artists who find in Sephiroth a source of inspiration. Ecologists who see in Kabbalistic cosmology a foundation for new ethics of relationship to nature. But the most interesting thing happens in the field of interfaith dialogue. Christian mystics discover deep parallels between Kabbalah and Hasidism. Sufis find commonality in Kabbalistic and Islamic meditation techniques. Buddhist teachers see similarity between the tree of Sephiroth and Tibetan mandalas. This is not syncretism. This is not an attempt to mix everything into one mess. This is recognition, understanding that the human spirit everywhere seeks the same thing: connection with the infinite, overcoming the limitations of ego, finding meaning in seemingly meaningless existence. Kabbalah, in this context, appears as one of the maps of human spiritual journey. Not the only one, but very detailed, tested by centuries, tried in different circumstances, capable of serving as compass for those seriously engaged in work on themselves. In the silence of modern night, when neon lights of cities drown out starlight, when information noise drowns out the voice of soul, Kabbalah offers a way to find inner silence, a way to hear that quiet voice that speaks in the depth of every heart, a way to remember who we really are. This return to sources does not mean rejection of everything new. It means discernment, the ability to separate grain from chaff, eternal from transient. What really helps spiritual growth from what only entertains the mind. And gradually, a new community forms. People who seriously study Kabbalah, who do not seek in it magical recipes for quick success, who are ready for long, patient work on themselves, who understand that real spiritual development is not accumulation of exotic experiences, but gradual purification of heart and mind. In this community, meet religious and secular people, Jews and non-Jews, professors and workers. All are united by one thing: understanding that Kabbalah is not a museum exhibit. This is living tradition, an instrument of knowledge and transformation that can be useful to any serious seeker of truth. But what does it mean to practice Kabbalah today? How to apply ancient techniques in the modern world? How to live according to Kabbalistic principles in society built on completely different values? You wake up early in the morning in a big city. Outside, it is already light, but the sun is not visible behind the wall of skyscrapers. Streets fill with people hurrying to work. Each is immersed in their concerns. Each carries their burden of problems and anxieties. And you ask yourself how to find the divine in this world of asphalt and glass. How to see the sacred in a world that seems completely profane. The Kabbalistic answer is simple and simultaneously revolutionary. The sacred is not somewhere there in distant places or special circumstances. It is here, now, in this concrete moment, in the breath you take, in the steps you make, in the words you speak, in the thoughts that pass through your mind. Practice begins with attention. Kabbalists call this hit bone nut, deep contemplation. But this is not intellectual analysis. This is presence, full awareness of what is happening here and now. The ability to see miracle in ordinary, divine in human, infinite in finite. You learn to meditate on letters of the sacred alphabet, not as abstract symbols, but as living forces. Aleph, the first letter, is the breath of life. When you concentrate on it, you connect with the source of all existence. Bet, the second letter, is house, blessing. Meditating on it, you create space of holiness in your heart. But meditation is only the beginning. Kabbalah teaches that spiritual practice must permeate all life. Every action can become sacred ritual, every word prayer, every meeting with another person an opportunity for service. You walk down the street and see a beggar. Traditional ethics says, give him alms. This is a good deed. Kabbalistic ethics goes deeper. It sees in this beggar a spark of divine light temporarily hidden by circumstances. Your task is not simply to help materially. Your task is to see this spark, to relate to the person as bearer of the sacred, and thereby help this spark shine brighter. You work in an office. Routine, numbers, reports. It seems this is very far from spirituality. But Kabbalah teaches, even here one can serve repairing the world. Honesty in work is a sacred principle. Respect for colleagues is recognition of divine spark in every person. Quality performance of duties is participation in maintaining cosmic order. At home, in family, new opportunities for practice open. Kabbalah sees in family relationships reflection of interaction of Sephiroth. Man and woman are Chokshma and Bina, wisdom and understanding. Their union creates new worlds, children. Their love is model of ye divine love. But this is not sentimental romanticization. Kabbalah realistically understands the complexity of human relationships. It knows about conflicts, about pain, about disappointments, and it offers tools for working with these difficulties. The technique of teshuvah, return, repentance, which allows correcting mistakes, understanding that every person passes their own path of development, and one must be patient. Special place in Kabbalistic practice is occupied by work with emotions. Traditional spirituality often calls for suppressing negative emotions. Kabbalah teaches to transform them. Anger can become righteous indignation at evil. Fear can turn into awe. Sadness can become compassion. Any emotion contains within itself a spark of divine light that needs to be liberated. You study correspondence between Sephiroth and emotional states. Chesed is unconditional love, ability to give without expecting anything in return. Gevura is ability to establish boundaries, to say no when necessary. Tiferet is harmony, skill in finding balance between extremes. And you begin to work with yourself. Meditate on these qualities. Develop them within yourself, not through coercion, but through understanding, not through suppression of undesirable, but through cultivation of desirable. Gradually, your personality becomes more harmonious, more whole, more capable of love and service. Kabbalah teaches that every person has their unique mission in the world, their special way of service, their contribution to the common work of repairing the world. The task is to find this mission, to understand one's talents, to realize one's possibilities, and to direct them for the good of the world. This can be anything. A doctor heals bodies and thereby heals souls. A teacher transmits knowledge and thereby spreads light. An artist creates beauty and thereby reflects divine beauty. Even a simple worker performing their work with love and conscience participates in maintaining world order. But most important is the quality with which any action is performed. Kabbalah calls this kavana, intention. The same action can be selfish or altruistic, sacred or profane, depending on intention with which it is performed. You learn to sanctify every moment of your life. Waking in morning, you thank for return of soul to body. Taking food, you realize divine energy that supports your existence. Meeting people, you see in each a spark of divine light. Falling asleep in evening, you entrust your soul for safekeeping to the Creator. This is not fanaticism. This is not obsessive religious behavior. This is natural state of person who understood their connection with infinite, who saw sacred dimension of everyday life, who learned to live with open heart. And gradually, your life begins to change. Not externally, you still work, communicate with people, solve ordinary problems. But internally, everything becomes different. Depth appears, meaning, understanding that every day is opportunity, opportunity to become better, opportunity to help world become better, opportunity to bring closer that time when divine light will shine in all its fullness. Kabbalistic practice does not promise easy life. It does not guarantee absence of problems and sufferings, but it gives what is much more important: meaning, understanding of why you are here, that your life has significance, that your efforts are not in vain, that you participate in something infinitely great and beautiful. In silence of night meditation, when world sleeps, and you remain alone with yourself and Creator, you feel this connection with all existence, with all people who have ever sought truth, with all Kabbalists of past who walked this path before you, with all seekers of future who will follow it after you. And you understand, Kabbalah does not end. It continues in everyone who seriously steps on path of inner development, in everyone ready to take responsibility for repairing world, in everyone who opens their heart to divine light. And here we approach end of our journey through centuries and continents, through libraries of sages and Hasidic courts, through secret societies and university auditoriums, through destructions and rebirths, through forgetting and new discoveries. What have we seen? We have seen how human spirit tirelessly seeks answers to eternal questions. Who are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going? What is meaning of our existence? How to connect finite with infinite? How to find divine in human? Kabbalah is one attempt to answer these questions. Not the only one, but very deep, very honest, very human. It does not claim to possess all truth. It simply offers path, map for those ready to embark on journey to themselves, to their true nature, to source of all existence. You sit in silence, perhaps at home, in your room, perhaps in library, perhaps in park under tree. Place is not important. Important is what happens inside. You close eyes. Breathing becomes slower, deeper. Thoughts gradually quiet, and in this silence begins to sound something else. Not sound, not voice. Something more subtle. Presence. Sensation that you are not alone, that around you, within you, permeating every cell of your body, flows inexhaustible river of life. River that began with first moment of creation and will flow until end of time. In this silence disappear boundaries between past and future, between self and others, between human and divine. Remains only being, pure, simple, radiant being. What Kabbalists called Ein Sof, infinity. You do not dissolve in this experience. You do not lose yourself. On contrary, you find yourself, your true essence, that spark of divine light that was in you always, but which was obscured by bustle, anxieties, illusions of everyday life. And you understand, this is what all this long history led to. All these centuries of search, all these generations of sages, all these books and systems, to this simple moment of presence, to this quiet recognition of who you are in reality. Kabbalah is not museum antiquity. It is not exotic philosophy. It is living path to this recognition. Path that each can walk in their own way, at their own pace, in their own language, in context of their culture and their epoch. Symbols may change. Terms may be translated. Practices may be adapted. But essence remains unchanged. Search for unity behind multiplicity. Search for meaning behind chaos. Search for love behind fear. Search for light behind darkness. You open eyes. Room is same. World is same. But something has changed. In your gaze, depth has appeared. In your heart, warmth. In your understanding, clarity. You no longer seek truth somewhere far away. You know it is here. In this breath. In this heartbeat. In this moment of boundless presence. And you rise. Return to your ordinary affairs. But now, these affairs are sanctified by new understanding. Every action becomes ritual. Every word, prayer. Every meeting, opportunity to see divine in another person. Kabbalah has taught you the main thing, that sacred is not opposite to ordinary, that divine is not separated from human, that heavens are not somewhere in unreachable height. They are here, now, in every moment of your life. One need only know how to see. In silence that comes after all words, after all explanations, after all systems and symbols, remains only this: simple presence, quiet joy of being, gratitude for the fact that you exist, that world exists, that in this world, love, beauty, wisdom, holiness are possible. Kabbalists of all times sought this and found, each in their own way, each in their own language, but all discovered one and same thing. That mystery is not somewhere far away, that it is closer than breath, more intimate than own thoughts. It is you yourself, your true nature, your deepest essence. And in this discovery, history of Kabbalah simultaneously ends and begins anew. Ends because goal is reached, mystery is opened, tree of life is discovered in own heart, begins anew because every moment is new possibility to live from this understanding, new possibility to be who you really are. In infinite silence that embraces all and everything, sounds silent song of creation, song that began on first day of world and will sound until last, song in which every note is living being, every harmony connection between hearts, every pause possibility for new beginning. You are part of this song. You are one of its notes. Unique, inimitable, necessary. Without you, song would be incomplete. Your life is your note in cosmic symphony. Your love is your harmony with others. Your silence is your contribution to great silence from which every sound is born. Kabbalah is reminder of this song, of fact that you participate in it, of fact that your note is important, of fact that you can sound purely, beautifully, in harmony with whole, and of fact that when you sound sincerely, entire world becomes little more perfect. At end of all words remains silence, same silence with which we began, silence full of possibilities, silence from which every word is born, silence to which every word returns, having fulfilled its task. In this silence lives Kabbalah, not as system of knowledge, not as a set of practices, but as living presence of mystery in your heart, as reminder of who you are, as invitation to be this always, here, now, in every breath, in every moment of this infinitely precious life.